So with WildCard hyping up some big announcement for the Game Awards and everyone thinking it's going to be an Ark 2 announcement, I decided, hey, you know what? I should come back to life and make a video with like some Ark 2 suggestions. Because they listened to me once before about the kangaroo, right? I'm pretty sure they saw my Reddit post and conveniently took every single idea I offered. So maybe they'll see this video and go, that guy's got some good ideas, we should listen to him. And before I like hop into all my ideas and shit, I just want to start off by saying, I don't hate Ark. And I'm not mad, son. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. Because the idea behind Ark is cool as hell. But, like, the reality of playing the game is just so disappointing. It's this grindy, buggy, like, unbalanced mess that seems, you know, to me at least, to have settled for mediocrity when it could have been, like, actually great. And with the potential Ark 2 coming somewhere down the line, I figured now would be the perfect time for someone who has spent an ungodly amount of time on this game to give old WildCard some suggestions on how to make Ark 2 not just good, but great. The first thing I think I'd like to see be done better is just the overall environment of the maps. It needs some more harsh weather, disasters and whatnot, you know, like hurricanes or strong storms that destroy lower tier structures and, you know, clear away all the little thatch things on the beach, or lightning and winds that negatively affect flyers, so just flying isn't so safe and free. We just need some type of aerial threat, something that can cause you harm so that you can't just cheese all the survival elements of the game by flying over them. And likewise, you shouldn't be able to just hide in a hole or go hide in a cave and be super safe. You know, you could add in earthquakes that damage certain structures or cause severe damage to people building in caves. I'd also really like to see some seasons and different weather patterns or plants available depending on what time of year it is, you know, what the actual season is. And I think I'd just like to see more variety in the plants in general, you know? Add in some fruit trees and vegetables that you can find out in the wild that you can pick and scavenge for, you know? Not just the berries. In fact, make it so berries only grow on specific bushes instead of just every generic bush dropping random assorted berries. You know, we could have like regional plants that you can only find in specific parts of the map, like you said you would a long time ago and never did. And the last, like, environmental change I'd like to see is just more flat places and more areas just suited for actually building bases. Like, there's a reason the fan-made maps are so much more popular than the, like, official dev-made ones. It's because they just have better flat spots to build bases. Like, the island is a really nice map, but it has almost no good flat areas to build a base. Like, it's just kind of silly, you know? So please, give us some more flat areas to build on, or barring that, you know, make it so we can more easily build on uneven terrain. But I guess I'll get into that with the building stuff later. But now, can we just talk about the dinosaurs for a minute?
Christ, that right there is the
dinosaurs.
Now let's talk about them.
Dinosaurs.
Talk about
Dinosaurs.
Please,
WildCard.
I'm dying to talk about
Dinosaurs.
with you all day, okay?
So first off, the Wild Dino AI really needs some work, because wild dinos either mindlessly kill everything in sight or just aimlessly wander until something murders them. I just want them to feel more alive, you know, give them herds, make them migrate around the map, give others nests and babies to protect, have like the herbivores foraging for food or grazing on plants, make the predators and hunters just actually make sense, you know, make them hunt things they would actually eat, you know, no more of those tiny little critters attacking giant gigas and shit. You can make it so they have that sensory-based input you guys talked about a long time ago, you know, make it so they can see or smell, so we can hide and try to get away from them. Have it so some of them sleep at night while the nocturnal ones are out hunting, and overall just have some more interesting and interactive and just fun interactions with them. And speaking of fun, you guys gotta change the taming mechanic, please. Holy shit, is it so bad. No one wants to just sit around an unconscious dinosaur for like an hour feeding it narcotics. It's not fun. Like, okay, when we first started playing the game, me and my buddies back in 2015, and we tamed our first dinosaur, everyone was complaining about how boring as shit it was. And I remember sitting there telling them that, oh, don't worry about it, guys. You know, I was like defending WildCard saying, you know, it's early access, guys. Don't worry about it. This has got to be like a placeholder. I'm sure they'll change it. And here we are, what, 5 years later with that same stupid mechanic? Like, even if you just incorporated some fan mods like immersive taming, it would be a million times better than the boring ass taming we have now. At least make it more interactive, less time consuming, and for the love of all that is holy, rebalance the tame times for each creature. Like, why does a kangaroo, man, the Procoptodon, an early game transportation mount, take about as long to tame as a fucking giga? In what world does that make any type of sense? which leads me to my next point, dino balancing when tamed, or lack thereof. It's just kind of all over the place. Like here, I'll give you an example. Here's a picture of the dossiers of every tameable critter in the game. Now here's all the ones that actually get used on official servers in like the current meta. Now here's all the ones that I never use marked out. You see the problem? A huge portion of them just have no niche. They've got no purpose, like no reason to even bother taming them. So just please go back through and give each of them some niche, some purpose, some little clearly defined early, mid-game, and late-game dinos, you know, so each of them have some reason to be tamed. And now you might be saying, hold on, Kavite, that's some subjective bullshit. That's just your opinion, right? But you know what isn't? This complete lack of balancing on the goddamn breeding and fucking maturation times? Why can't I say that? Maturation? I'm retarded. Anyway, it's just completely random. Like let's take a quick little trip over to the Ark wiki page on breeding. So why does the Bronto and the Diplo have the exact same breeding times, even though the Bronto is way better? And it has a higher base weight, so it can just hold more food during baby phase, which makes it easier to raise. Why am I talking like a robot? I don't know. Why does the direwolf take longer to raise than the dire bear, despite the fact that the dire bear is far better, and the direwolf doesn't even get a saddle? Why does the gas bag have the exact same breeding times as a hyenodon, right? One's a good tanking and transportation mount, one's a useless little fucking hyena that nobody uses it for anything. And I could go on, but you get the point. Just go look at the fucking wiki page. It's hilarious. And while I'm on the subject, maybe change how feeding babies works? Ideally, I'd like to see the parent interact and take care of its kids in some way. But like barring that, I think I'd just like to see a change to their weight and how much food they can hold. It's kind of just silly to me that something like a Rex is easier to raise than a small dino like a direwolf, because the Rex has a higher base weight, which means you can put more food in its inventory, which means you have to check on it less, which just means it's easier to raise, which is dumb. A strong big dino like that should be harder to raise from baby than a little tiny one, right? It's so dumb, you know. Anyway, we'll move on to the next topic. Let's talk about building now, shall we? You know, because as I'm sure you guys have guessed, building is my favorite part of Ark. Just go watch some building tip videos, mine or like Captain Fat Dog's, and just see how janky it is, you know, how many workarounds you have to do to build simple things like a box on an uneven terrain. And then there's the hitboxes or like structure collision on crafting stations. They are just all over the place and weird. Like let's look at the smithy. Why can one side be placed right up against the wall, but the other side can't? Like it has this annoying gap. Why does the industrial forge have these weird holes in the middle? You know, maybe fix it so the models we see are actually the same as the hitbox, where you can place it. And speaking of weird collision issues, can we please get the ability to build on uneven terrain? Like, just give us stacking foundations like the mods have, or give us some structures that can clip into the terrain a little bit, or just anything, please. Because right now, on official servers, we end up with this janky shit like look at this. That's ugly. It's hideous. Nobody wants to see that. Get out of here. And yeah, there are like some workarounds, some ways you can fill in these stupid holes, but it's just time consuming and it's just janky as hell. Why not just give us the tools to build some beautiful buildings, you know? And on top of fixing some pre-existing building issues, I'd love to see some more variety in the structures of types and pieces we can place. Like right now we have thatch wood, adobe, stone, metal, and tech. But thanks to some weird leveling and poor balancing, you mostly only ever see stone, metal, or tech. But I'll talk about that more later in the progression section. Anyway, just add in some more structure types like reinforced concrete or brick and mortar, you know, wattle and daub for a medieval look. Something like bulletproof glass for fancier modern bases. You know, I'm sure you could make a lot of cool tech structures, and I'm pretty sure there are a million amazing mods you could use for inspiration. Like just go check out the Castles Keep and Forts mod. Ooh, those are so good. Both the fantasy one and the science fiction one. They're both so good. Just incorporate those because, in my opinion, they are just straight up better than anything in the official Ark. And another thing that mods add a lot of that I want more of in Ark 2 is just furniture and crafting stations and more variety of that nature. Right now we really only have wood furniture, and like if I want to cook some meat, right, I have to either cook it over a campfire like a complete barbarian, or I cook it over a modern industrial sized grill like my base's kitchen is a McDonald's or something. You know, where's the medieval stone tier one or the fancy tech one? You know, just give us more variety to flesh out the like various stages of the game, you know, the ages you go through, and give us some more decorative stuff to make our houses look fancy and more unique. I guess the last thing I want to talk about for building kind of ties in the next subject, which is just PvP. And that is that we just need more structures to protect our bases. Right now we have turrets, a tech shield, and some rinky-dinky traps and like spikes. But none of them are like actually good enough to fend off someone while we're not online. They're just super easy to cheese. So give us some more defense structures, or at least some more variety, so we can like build and protect our base in different ways, you know, something to change up the meta so it's not just giant metal box covered in turrets. That's so boring. And I know this will trigger some people, okay? So trigger warning. I actually think we should have some type of default offline raid protection, so people who have other things to do besides play Ark as a full-time job can actually play and enjoy PvP servers. Because attacking a base when no one's online isn't even player versus player, it's player versus empty base. And like, in my opinion, that's just not fun for either side, right? Especially since most PvP isn't even like remotely fair fights. It's always some super strong tribe crushing a little weak one. It's always a tech tier tribe meat running some stone tier tribe. And I've played the game for a long time, and I've been on both sides of this problem, right? I've been the big old scary alpha smashing some little tiny tribe into the dirt, and I've been in that small little castle tribe that was obliterated by a 12-year-old who wanted to test his first Giga. And you know, just neither of those options is fun. One's just hopelessly frustrating, and the other is like a boring chore you just kind of have to do. And over the last 5 years of playing this game, I found the most fun I've had while PvPing was, well, you know, more or less in fair fights against someone about the same stage of the game as me. Just a couple little beach bobs running around fighting each other with pointy sticks. The medieval battle with swords and shields and crossbows, you know, and the big tech battles with like Iron Man flying around going pew 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 at some dinosaurs that have giant metal shit on their head that are shooting lasers out too. like it's just way more fun fighting someone about the same level as you rather than taking a Titan to go crush some little beach bob's tiny metal hut that has like 5 turrets on it. And this just brings me to my final subject, you know, my biggest suggestion on how to make Ark 2 great. And that is to completely change the progression system and the way your character grows and advances through these different ages of civilizations. Because right now the game just has some problems with how the gameplay actually progresses. We have these different stages or like ages of civilizations that you kind of grow through, you know, the primitive, the medieval, the modern, the futuristic, but they just aren't balanced very well. I talked about it a bit before, but there's no clearly defined early, mid, and late game dinos, so some of the critters just are never used, and certain stages of the game just lack specific crafting stations or structures, so you keep having to use the lower tier one until you get to the next upper tier. In PvP, there just aren't fair fights between people at the same level. Instead, we have like primitive little beach bobs competing against giant tech tier tribes. And because of this like janky progression system, most people don't even try to build early game structures. They just run around the island collecting explorer notes to level up as fast as possible in order to reach the modern age so they can have some turrets, you know, because without turrets, you know, there's no guarantee that your base and your dinosaurs are going to be there when you log back on tomorrow morning. So my idea to fix all of this, you know, fix all the progression problems, is to add in a tier-based server system, meaning that like there are 4 different server clusters, each set to a different stage of the game, like a primitive one, a medieval, a modern, and a futuristic. And each one would have a different map, different creatures, and items balanced specifically for that tier. So we start off on a more primitive server that's, say, level 1 to 25, and we have a more basic map similar to the island with all the wild dinosaurs, but you can only tame specific ones that are balanced to this stage of the game. Like, say, a raptor for early game hunter, parasaur for early game transportation, or Apache or beaver, you know, for early game farming. But you wouldn't be able to actually tame the larger dinos yet, right? The Rexes, everything, they would still be there, but you couldn't tame them. They would just be there to be a threat to keep that survival aspect alive and dangerous. And on these primitive servers, you'd only be able to use the primitive technology, structures, and items. And you could even have a map, you know, caves, dungeons, and bosses designed specifically to be fought with the medieval gear and these early game dinos. Hell, maybe you could even actually incorporate Primitive Plus into official, you know, you guys remember that's a thing? I don't. And then once you hit level 25, you know, you could choose to ascend up to the next tier of the server cluster, the medieval stone tier, say level 20 to 50. And here you could still use the primitive stuff, but you could also use the medieval structures and equipment. And since you're a bit more advanced, you know, you could tame some slightly larger dinos like Carnos, Trikes, Ankies, you know, etc. And again, you know, you could have specific map designed for the medieval time period with like better places for castles, you know, more fantasy creatures like the wyverns. And again, you could also have dungeons and boss fights specifically designed around like using the medieval gear. It'd be so cool to have like caves you had to go exploring in with just swords and shields and crossbows. And then at level 50, you could transfer up again, but this time to the modern tier, say 50 to 75. And here we have the guns, electricity, the metal structures, and explosives and all that jazz. You could tame the still larger creatures, but not quite all of them. Like, you could have Rexes, Paracers, Diplos, but not quite the Gigas or Titans yet. And again, you could have a map that's specifically designed for this tier, bosses, cave fights, all that jazz designed around this type of equipment, designed to be fought with guns and riot gear and specific dinosaurs. Finally, at level 75, you transfer up to the futuristic tech server, the last one, the level 75 to 100. This one could be an extinction-like map with futuristic sci-fi goodies all over the place. And at this stage, you'd be so advanced you could tame any creature, even the Giga, even the crazy Titans and all that shit. You could make it just way more extreme, all the environmental threats like the radiation and the caves. You could have, you could even have those roaming bosses that are in the normal map that you guys talked about doing before. That'd be cool as hell. Anyway, I'm sure you guys get the idea by now. By limiting the amount of sandbox parts that each tier has, you could better balance them independently from each other. As for transferring, you could still transfer between the different servers, but you couldn't transfer from a more advanced civilization down to a lower tier one with all your gear, right? If that makes any sense to you guys. So I'll give you an example. Say you could transfer up a tier from the medieval one to the modern one with all of your stone tier equipment and creatures, but you wouldn't be able to do the opposite. You couldn't transfer from a more advanced server down to a lower one with all of your better equipment and better dinosaurs. You couldn't take all your fancy tech gear and titans and then go transfer down to a primitive server to go crush some poor little cavemen. And this would just really help with the PvP balancing, and change up the meta just drastically. We'd see a lot more variety in the combat, right? We'd see a lot more different dinosaurs that aren't being used now actually be used. Like on the primitive server, you couldn't have Gigas, so you'd have to be fighting on dire wolves or raptors or something, It wouldn't be just solely these massive tech battles we have now with a million turrets going pew pew everywhere. It'd be a lot more interesting, I think. And while people who play the game longer would still, technically have an advantage, they could just massively produce bow and arrows and primitive gear and then transfer down to a primitive server. So they'd still have an advantage, but it would still be way more fair, It wouldn't be titans against sticks and stones, right? We'd see just a lot more balanced, a lot more interesting fights, I think. And this wouldn't only affect, PvP balancing, it'd help with a lot of things, and I think a really important part is that it would allow people to play the game however they want. I know there's a sizable portion of the community that just hates the tech and just hates the sci-fi elements of the games and just wishes it was more dinosaurs again, And if they just changed it up like this, everybody could have what they want, People who want dinosaurs could still have that. People who want tech dinosaurs and lasers and Iron Man shit could still have that. People who want medieval fantasy could still have that too. Everybody gets what they want. Nobody's mad. Hell, they could even incorporate it into the story, so when you ascend or do something after being a boss, you actually transfer up to the next server tier instead of watching a cutscene and then just kind of going back to where you started. It was always really silly to me, but I guess that's about it. I really hope they are making an Ark 2. I'm really looking forward to it, and I know some people will scream, "Oh, it's gonna be a quick money grab," but I'm actually really hopeful that they're gonna make an Ark 2. It would just be the perfect opportunity to fix all the spaghetti code, to go back and make major changes without messing up the current Ark servers and upsetting all of the fan base they currently have. And if they do it right, it actually could be fucking amazing, especially if they, I don't know, just listen to me. I'm the smartest person ever, and you guys are all a bunch of dummies.
What is this monstrosity I am witnessing?
What's
I guess
happening?
everybody
Holy
back
shit!
up from it. They're trying to attack you, yeah.
Wait, what's the talk button again? Is it X?
Look at this one guy over here attacking the wall like a jackass. Get him, buddy! Kill those stupid chickens! Special chickens, yeah. Oh yeah, get him! Get him, buddy!
Oh, there we go. Wait, yours isn't even, he's camping art?
Mine's got 1,000 something HP is why. Your chicken's really dumb.
Aww. God damn, Kevin, you're brutal.
Look at- It's not surprising. My little guy was just too strong.